All for joining today's webinar. I'm Christina, and today we will be focusing on the Continia Sustainability solution. It helps businesses simplify and streamline their CO2 reporting. Today I'm joined by Federica from Continia. She's an expert on the sustainability solution, and she will be demonstrating the solution for us in a moment. As you may have noticed, I'm hosting this webinar in English, and this is because Federica does not speak Danish, so of course it makes sense to do it in English instead. Before we start, I'd just like to highlight to you that the sustainability solution is compatible with Business Central version 24 and 25. That is the solutions from this year. The version 24 is from April and the 25 is from October this year. And of course, the solution works seamlessly with both the on-prem and the SaaS, that is the BC Online environment. Before we just dive into the content, I'd just like to share a few practical details. First of all, I'm recording the webinar, and after the session, I'll send you the recording so you can rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. Secondly, if you have any questions during the webinar, just please write them in the chat, and we'll collect all questions and address them at the end of the presentation. I just have a few slides about who is Logos Consult and who is Continia. So at Logos Consult, we've are dedicated ourselves to helping businesses succeed with Business Central, and that is formerly known as Dynamics NAV or Navision. In addition to ERP implementations, upgrades, and support, we are also certified partner for the Continia software solutions. Our offices in Allerede and Vejle are home to a team of experienced consultants and developers ready to support your business. We implement and support both BC on-prem and the online environment, that is SaaS, where you get the upgrades automatically by Microsoft. So at Logos Consult, we offer a wide range of services to support your ERP journey. Our implementation services focus on delivering tailored solutions that rely on standard software to ensure simplicity and efficiency. We also provide support and maintenance for your BC solutions to keep it running smoothly. And as a certified Continia partner, we specialize in some of the popular tools like document capture, expense management, payment management, and so on. And we can also, of course, help you with the new sustainability solution. Additionally, we help businesses upgrade from older ERP systems to the latest versions of Business Central, and we also provide training and consulting to our customers. And then I just have one slide about Continia software. Continia is a leading provider of add-ons for the Business Central solution. Their add-ons cover a wide range of needs, from automated invoice handling with the document capture solution to streamlined employee expense processing with expense management, and they also have the payment handling solution with payment management or Continia banking. Today's focus is on their new sustainability solution, which is designed to help businesses calculate and report their CO2 emissions in a simple and compliant way. All right, so that was just some information about Logos Consult and Continia, and then I'll hand over the screen to you, Federica.
Well, thank you, Christina, and thank you very much for joining the webinar today. What I would like to start with is by giving you a brief context on why carbon accounting or sustainability tool is so necessary at this moment. I think it's no surprise to anyone that we have laws at European and global level that are starting to enforce sustainability reporting, and they're setting certain thresholds for different companies and different timeline. The issue, if we want to call it so, is that even though you might not be expected to start reporting now or from next year, because the regulation does not apply to you yet, the pressure, and some of you might already seen this, might come from the market. So stakeholders, suppliers, customer will start asking you sustainability data because they need it for their own reporting. So just carbon reporting and sustainability reporting is really becoming a must. And in order to attract investors and stay competitive in the business, the best moment to start is now. But don't worry, at Continia, we have developed Continia Sustainability, which is here to help you with the carbon reporting and later with next major for the whole ESG. And I'm going to introduce you to the concepts today, and we're going to see through this short PowerPoint and then a demo in the BC environment. So first, as I said, this release is very much focused on the process of carbon accounting. And why we decided to focus on something so small with respect to the whole ESG reporting is because we have experienced ourselves how complex and time-consuming the process is. It's a struggle to start the process, to be able to gather the right data and match it with the right factors. But today we have a comprehensive solution that simplifies and automates the accounting directly within your Business Central. And we do it in 3 simple and efficient steps. The first one would be to track and collect all the necessary data directly from your Business Central system. And allowing with a certain flexibility the import of this data. You can, of course, record data manually if you need. For example, it might be the case of employees commuting. But we also integrate with 2 of our other solutions, being document capture and expense management, for an even faster and smoother processing of data. So you're sure that you're not just relying on your financial data, but eventually you can capture all the relevant data for your sustainability reporting. Once we have gathered all the information, then we can calculate and allocate the emissions in the right scope and in the right category. And the system does it for you. You don't need to have the knowledge of what are scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 of the GHG or greenhouse gas protocol. The system will know it for you and allocate the emissions in the right spot just by having you specify some definition or setting of your company. You can both work with financial and quantitative data to collect carbon emissions, and the calculations are performed using over 50,000 integrated emission factors divided now in 11 different databases, so avoiding you the hassle of researching and registering emission factor manually. Finally, the solution helps you publish and post this emission data directly into 1 or more sustainability reports. The solution comes with a default one that is aligned with the greenhouse gas protocol, this international standard that guides companies in doing their carbon reporting, and produce this report that is comparable to the one of other companies. This might be across your sector or across even countries. And it really provides a critical insight into your operation, helping you set reduction policies, not only for emissions, but also for the use of your resources. And to give you a better sense of how everything builds together, I propose that we start from this final step, the reporting, and we work our way backwards. So what you see here, it's a preview of the default report that we will see more detail after in the demo. As I said, it's aligned with the GHG protocol, so it's broken down in the 3 scopes and 15 categories of scope 3. Providing information in CO2 equivalent, so you have this universal unit of measure that you can compare across different reports. And it functions very similarly to financial reports in Business Central, so you can define rows, columns, and compare different years based on your company needs. And in the same way that the financial reports are generated through journals and general ledger accounts, for example, you can think about our sustainability report following a similar process. And I'm going to show you what are the pages that build up to the final report. So here you have the view of all the pages of Continia Sustainability. As I said, it all starts with the data gathering, and this happens to what we call environmental accounts and emission types. You can imagine this as, for example, a chart of accounts, but divided in different sections: facilities, vehicles, purchase goods and services, which help you track and categorize your business activities. Emission types are something similar, very focused on, for example, fuel and electricity, which are recurring emissions across your operation, and then they feed information inside the environmental account. And the activities are registered in the journal, where emissions are automatically calculated. And just as financial journals record transactions, the environmental journals are used to manage and track the emission data. These journals are structured in a similar way of the environmental accounts, so they are divided in sections for facility, vehicle, goods and services, etc. And they help you allocate the emission in the right scope. And finally, to calculate your emissions, you will need emission factor, which are one of the major advantages of continuous sustainability, the fact that are integrated into the solution. And avoid you having to research for those. And of course, if you're not satisfied, you can always import your own. But let's dive in a little bit more into these concepts. And we will start with emission types, which, as we said, are categories used to define recurring source of emission across your operations, and that are fed after into the environmental accounts. And this can include fuels, can include electricity, refrigerant gases if you have an AC system, but also heating and cooling. And if we want to look at how a card looks like, it's very simple. So we're looking at a card for petrol fuel. The only thing that we have to define here is, of course, name and code, and link this to an emission factor set. So now I'm choosing from those that are included in the solution, but it can be any of your customized databases. If we look at another card, this time for electricity, this is a bit more special and it's unique in its kind, because it requires to connect the information to 2 emission factors, and for the simple reason that the greenhouse gas protocol requires company to provide information under what they call a dual reporting when they report electricity. So a location-based approach where you account for emissions based on the energy mix of your country or region, and then a market-based approach where you will register the emission factor from your supplier, for example. And at last, as we said, the emission types are used repeatedly across the environmental accounts. So you don't have to repeat these emission factors each time, but you can just select the emission type, and then the system will source the information from there. And speaking of environmental accounts, these are completely configurable to suit the needs of your company and the structure. And just like GL accounts, they can be organized into different sections and groups, so you have full control over your emission and how the data is managed. You can only, of course, use posting accounts, and you can link either an emission type, like we said in the B&W here, or you can link an emission factor directly, as we see for this account for economy class long flights. Each account card is designed in a very specific way, so it ensures that the system, by asking you a few specificity of the activity, is able to define in which scope and which category the emissions are supposed to be allocated. If we take the example of your purchase system, the system will ask you, for example, is the purchase that you're making considered an operational expense? Then it will be allocated in scope 3, category 1. Or is this considered a capital expense? Then it will be allocated in category 2. So it's very simple. It doesn't require you to have a big knowledge of carbon accounting, but it makes the calculation and allocation autonomous. And then once we have made the setup for the emission type and the environmental accounts, we are ready to go. We can work with the journal, where, like traditional journals, these are the space where user can work and report on the type of activity that they have in their company, where it is with a specific journal for business travel or with the general journal, of course. And you can work both with financial data or quantitative data, depending on where you are in your carbon accounting process. But both are correct, and you can also make a mix of those. Plus, you can zoom into the results directly if you're curious to learn about in which scope the emissions are allocated, which is the emission factor that is being used, or the data set, the version, and you have more information about the breakdown of different gases and even the energy mix, if we are talking about electricity related emissions. And very important is the feature that allows you to have multiple outputs with a single input. So when we talk, for example, electricity, we said that we need a dual reporting. So we will report our electricity bill and obtain the two results. Or if we report fuel, for example, we will obtain two different types of emissions, one linked to the combustion of the fuel and one linked to the upstream processes. But we can see that later in the demo. It will be easier. As I said, one of the major advantages of Continia Sustainability is the integration with emission factors. You will have free access to more than 50,000 factors, which cover datasets both at global level, at country level, or you have even electricity specific. These are continuously updated by Continia, so at least once a year, even more often if any government publish any correction. So you will just receive a notification regarding the dataset that you're using, asking you if you want to download the latest version. And the best part is that if you have already posted emission with that dataset, you can recalculate any posted emission, so you're sure that your report is always up to date. Each emission factor is expressed in CO2 equivalents for better comparison, also for those that are provided by your suppliers, for example. And then you have a breakdown in different Kyoto Protocol gases and energy mix for electricity-related emission factors. And of course, as I said in the beginning, if you're not happy with the selection that we offer or your suppliers provide you with custom one, you can add them yourself and use those one instead of ours. Another big strength of Continia Sustainability, and Christina mentioned it in the beginning, is that we are 100% built inside Business Central. So user can only use Continia Sustainability if they have Business Central. And this makes carbon accounting much easier because you keep working with the tools and the processes that you already know. You can import the data quickly, saving time and reducing mistakes related to manual work. And you can keep using the same familiar system and interface, so you don't actually have to learn something completely new or change your workflows. And we have different way of importing data from Business Central. We can work with item ledger entries, for example, where we have in the item card a new fast tab called environmental accounting. So you can create a one-to-one relation or one-to-many relation between your item card and an environmental account. And it works the same for GL entries and GL account cards, where you can simply provide the information about the account type and the account number, and then the system will pre-fill the rest. This way, when you work with purchase invoices, for example, and you select the same GL account or item, you have all these fields already pre-filled, so you don't have to actually add any work to the accountant task. If you see here, the purchase invoice has new environmental column on the side, on the right side, that can be filled manually, or as we said, withdrawn from the information of the GL account or item. To get to the end, we are, of course, fully integrated with two other product of Continia, being this expense management and document capture. If you know expense management, you have the mobile app for your employees, and your employees will be able here to provide information that are necessary to account for emissions related to their expenses. This can be just the amount spent if we are using spend-based data to account for emissions, or it can be simple information like the country they stay in and how many nights they slept at a hotel, adding really no complex information to the expense reporting. And if we look at document capture instead, it works in a similar way of purchase invoices. So where we would specify a GL account number, and we have the GL account with that environmental data information specified, we will find them in the template with new template fields. So when we when we register the document, then our emissions are already calculated. And here you have a clear example of all the possible workflows inside Continia Sustainability. So as we just said, we can start from a travel expense or a purchase invoice, get them through expense management or document capture or simply Business Central, where they can be populated with environmental data. Once populated, we can import them into the journals. We can verify the numbers or not, and just post them directly into the sustainability report. All right, let's jump into the demo. Let me refresh the environment here. I will be showing you a couple of workflows to make you understand how Continia Sustainability integrates with the Business Central system. I'd like to start with purchase invoices. So in the case you don't have document capture or expense management, you can see that you can still easily work with Continia Sustainability. And I will create a couple of invoices. Let's start with one for a water bill, for example. I will specify a GL account for my water consumption. All right, let's select from here. And I'm going to show you here that in this GL account, sorry, not for rental, but for property. In this GL account, I already specified an environmental account type, goods and services, and an account number called water consumption. This information about volume and cubic meter are already pre-filled. So I did this once. Every time that I will receive a water bill and I'm using this GL account, this information will be stored there. So I'll select this one for my invoice. And you see that my information are already populated here. So I will continue with my normal accounting task. I will report the amount of my bill. The system is asking me if I want to also provide the information about the cubic meter of my invoice. Let's say that I don't have the time. I will leave this for someone else to do it in the environmental journal. So I will just post the invoice. So up to now, I didn't add any additional task to the accountant. I'll create a second invoice. This time, I will create an invoice for a software subscription. Again, I'll select the GL account for software subscription fees. All right, specify the quantity, and that's it. The system has already pre-filled with my account for computer programming, and it's not asking me to provide any additional data because this account is based on spent, and I have my information on spent in the invoice line directly, so I don't need to do anything else. Again, I'll approve and post the invoice. Before showing you where my invoices are treated with sustainability, I will show you the flow through document capture as well. So I have already prepared an electricity bill in my system. It should be here, down here. Yeah, very well. Okay, I will specify an account number and an account type for electricity, for property, and if we check the card here, we see that we have an environmental account type and number already specified. So I will select this, apply to the template, yes. And then here you see that I get a warning saying that I have sustainability data specified for this GL account, and it's suggesting me to add the template fields for sustainability. So I'll do it. It's a one-time task. Once it's done, it's always going to be there. All right, and if we see down here, I already have my data specified. I can check in the document how many kilowatts I'm being charged, or I can recognize it directly, and I will register my documents. So what I did is that I simply specify a GL account, as I always do, and added the kilowatt of my invoice. Here I will simply approve and post my invoice. All right. Let's close these flows by seeing how it works instead in expense management, and then we'll see all together where all this information end up in Continia Sustainability. So I will give you also here 2 examples of expenses, and you will see that it really doesn't ask complex information to the end user. All right. Let's take a first invoice for a hotel stay. I will specify a payment type and an expense type, in this case hotel. And because I selected hotel, I get 2 new fields here related to sustainability. One is for the country I stay in, and the other one is the number of nights, which is already recognized by AI of expense management. So my only challenge here is to specify in which country I stayed, and done. I will simply submit my invoice. I will create a second invoice, a second expense. This time I will take fuel receipt. All right, again, expense type, payment type and expense type. Let's say that I recharge petrol in my car, and I get already the the liters of fuel recognized by the AI from the receipt. So I actually don't have to specify anything else. Of course, the fields can be different based on the setting that I made for expense. and based on the emission factor that I'm using to report these expenses. If we are working only with spend-based emission factors, then the user doesn't need to provide any extra information because the information about the amount spent are already in the expense. All right, let's just approve these invoices. Perfect. We have one to approve here. And let's post it. And we'll post also the petrol receipt. And that it's done. Okay, so we have seen two purchase invoices, one for a water bill and one for a software subscription. We have seen an energy bill managed through document capture, and we have seen two expenses through expense management. Now what we do is that we go into the environmental journal and we import data. So this will import all new information that I get in Business Central with environmental data specified, of course. Right, so we see we have one new item in the facility journal, one in the vehicle, 19 in the goods and services, and one in business travel. Technically, I could just hit home and post, but I want to show you how the results look like. So I will open one by one and show you. In the facility journal, we have our purchase invoice from document capture for our electricity. So we have the kilowatts specified, the amount, and we have two results. As we said in the beginning, for electricity, we need to have a location-based result and a market-based result. If we look into those, they say already in which scope my emission will be calculated, the total emissions. If there is any conversion, for example, the dataset used and the version, we have the breakdown in the different greenhouse gases and the different energy mix. If I look at market, it's exactly the same, different value, of course, it just said market-based, yes. So we know that it's for the market-based approach. Right, let's go into the vehicle, and here I would expect to have my fuel from my fuel receipt, and there they are. If I zoom into the results, as I said before, we have a one-to-many results. So we have provided information about the fuel that we recharge in the car, and we get two different results, or a result split in two. So we have emissions related to the combustion of the fuel allocated in scope 1, and then emissions allocated to, emission related to the upstream processes of the generation of the fuel, or as we call them, well to tank, that are located in scope 3 and category 3. Again, I didn't specify anything regarding this. I just said in the very beginning what were the settings of my company, and then the system does this automatically. All right. Before going to the goods and services, I will just pass by the business travel, where I have my expense for the hotel stay, and I have my emissions calculated here, allocated in scope 3 and category 6 for business travel. Same type of information, the number of nights, the emission factor, total emissions, and the database. Now, if we go into the goods and services, all right, I would expect to have my purchase invoice for water bill. If you remember, we didn't specify the cubic meter here, but I can do it now. You see the results, it's 0, but in the moment I input the cubic meter, I get my emissions calculated and allocated in the right scope and right category. Then I have a second invoice or purchase invoice for my software subscription, and I have emissions also calculated here. And I have 17 lines here that have a different source, which is the item ledger entry source table. So as we said before during in the PowerPoint, for each environmental account, I can specify from where I want to get information. So in this case, I said that I wanted to get information from the item ledger entry table, but I could say a GL entry or a purchase invoice, credit memo, or expense. And I can set some filters, so I can filter on some specific items, if it's from purchase or sale, for example. And even if you want to work with historical data, because maybe you want to install Continia Sustainability next year, but account for emission of this year, you can use a posting date filter, so you can define a specific period to get all your data into the system and the emission calculated. And you see that I had 17 new items that are now in my journal with emissions calculated. Here they used a quantity-based information that were withdrawn from the item card. And if we zoom in, it's allocated in scope 3 and category 1. All right, I can just go out here and post everything at once. And now, if I want to see where my results are, I go into the sustainability reports and I open the default report that comes with a solution, but of course you can have your own. And you see its structure following the greenhouse gas protocol direction. So we have scope 1, scope 2 with location and market-based electricity, and scope 3 with the 15 categories. And of course, total emissions under location-based approach and market-based approach, because we don't want to double count emissions. All right, so we have some mobile combustion emissions for my fuel receipt. I have electricity for my electricity bill. I have the purchased goods and services for my water bill, software, and items. And then upstream process related to my fuel receipt and my business travel with the hotel results. So I'm actually able to compare different years and see hopefully a reduction in emissions. I want to also show you, before closing here, the emission factor sets. So these are the ones that are included now in the solutions. As you see, they are managed by Continia, so you cannot modify them. We take care of maintaining them for you. We have, for example, ABE, that is specific for electricity. So we have different countries. And then we have emissions factor for production, which is location-based, and residual mix, which is market-based, that eventually will be replaced by your supplier, your own supplier emission factor. And you can zoom in and see all information about the emission factor use, the latest version that are available. And the same information, you can find them here in the main card. So versions available. And if you don't really know about this data set, you can go into the link that is provided in the card. We have a link to Continia Docs where we explain what is this database about. You can even go in the official website to learn more and see for yourself if you want to download yourself the data set. We have an overview here of all the data sets available, with the sections or activities that are included into each database, if they are spend-based or, if they're quantity-based or spend-based here, or hybrid, so they have both. And you can see the years included and the latest version that we have. And for those of you that are not very familiar with the concept of emission factors, we have a guideline also on how to choose the best one for your carbon accounting. Ideally, you should not mix up different sources, but at some point it becomes unavoidable because different datasets provide different emission for different activities. So we have ABE and electric for electricity. We have country-specific like Climate Compass for Denmark, and we have global ones like Exio-base with different countries included. All right. Let me jump back to the presentation. I want to conclude here with the slide about comparison between Continia Sustainability and Microsoft Standard Solution. What I want to say before is that the two solutions were developed at the same time. So it was difficult for Continia to build on top of Microsoft as we normally would do. But while we're now operating on separate paths because we publish at the same time or we release at the same time, we understand that it's easier both for partners and for customers to work on top on what they already know from Microsoft. So we are committed to develop Continia Sustainability to better fit in the Microsoft ecosystem, always maintaining the extra automation and feature that we have included in Continia Sustainability. So the next slide, it's a quick comparison between the two systems to better understand how we can differentiate ourselves. So in terms of automation, where Microsoft Standard provides automation in calculation, where you would specify your own emission factor and then a way to calculate the emissions, and then they provide the final calculation. We don't only provide the automation in the calculation, but we also provide automation in the allocation. So you don't really have to know about what is the right scope or the right category of emissions, what are the accounting boundaries, and what is the impact of a different setting of your company. You will just provide information about your company and we will do the allocation. And of course, if you're providing information in a different unit from the one of the emission factor, we perform the unit conversion in the journal. Regarding the emission factors, as in Microsoft, you can register your own, which are broken down in 3 Kyoto protocol gases: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. In our solution, of course, you can register your own, as we said, but you can also use those are integrated in the solution with more than 50,000 items now that are supposed to grow as we add more and more database and more versions. They are broken down into the whole set of Kyoto protocol gases if you need that kind of information. And they are expressed in CO2 equivalent, so you have an universal comparison and you're able to compare what we provide with, for example, your supplier data and decide which one you want to use. We saw this for the fuels and for the electricity. In Continia Sustainability, you can have a one-to-many results, so you provide information through one journal line about the fuel consumed or the electricity consumed, and you get multiple results, where in Microsoft you would have to multiply this input, so register or import twice your purchase invoice in order to have the true results. So it's a one-to-one correspondence in Microsoft Standard. Then, regarding the data import, in Microsoft you can work with general ledger accounts, so get the data from GL accounts, and with purchase invoices, but in a different way from what we do, because in the purchase invoices in Microsoft, you can only specify directly the total amount of emissions. So you need to get that information from your supplier. Where in our system, we get the baseline data and we calculate the emissions inside the system. And you can get the baseline data from GL entries, item ledger entry, credit memo, purchase invoices, and also expense management and document capture. And finally, our sustainability report, as you saw, it's aligned with the greenhouse gas as the whole design of the solution. You have this recalculation feature. So if you have made some mistakes in the setup of your account, or if you receive a new version of a data set and you want to recalculate the posted emission using that, you have the feature. Where this feature is missing in Microsoft Standard, you of course have, I think, 3 different templates that they provide in an Excel file, and you get results into the 3 Kyoto Protocol gases, 3 main Kyoto Protocol gases. I think from the PowerPoint that would be it. I can show you, since we are a little bit in advance, inside the solution, how the setup worked a little bit. So we have a general setup that you can go through when you first install the solution. And here some interesting features are that you can define what are the accounting boundaries that you want to use for your whole system. So it's a definition that you do once, and then it's not changed anymore. And this defines, in part, where your emissions are going to be allocated. Another interesting feature is the automatic selection of the emission factors based on the posting date. So you can have a fiscal year that starts, for example, in April and end in March. Let's say that it's April this year and March 2025. You have 2 options. What it's recommended is that you use emission factors from the majority of your fiscal year, and that would be 24. So you would select fiscal starting year. This way the system, whenever they have a 2024 version of the emission factors, will use the latest one. If you instead you say, by your own choice, I want to use 2025 data, then you will say, I want to use fiscal end year emission factors, and the system will get 2025 emission factors. So it's something that helps you and make sure that the results that you get in the end are always up to date. All right, let's have a look at the emission types. I will go into Explore More Roles so I can open all the pages from Continia Sustainability, and I have all my emission types here. Let's take, for example, fuel. Here I would register all the fuel that are relevant to my company. This is all configuration data that come with the system, and then you can, of course, modify and adjust. What I'm showing you, it's UK localizations because data is in English, but we have, of course, the Danish localization, for example, where we have all data in Danish and emission factor from the Danish dataset. So let's take an example that might talk to everybody, which is petrol fuel. What I have here, as we said, is that I defined name and code, and then I link this to a data set. I'm choosing different in this case, but I could use Climate Compass, a category called fuel, and then inside the category, I will look and see what is the fuel that makes more sense for what the activity that I'm registering, and I will select that one. If we zoom in, we see that we have a vast choice in emission factors with different unit types. So we can register as energy, we can register as mass, we can register as volume. And we have already 2 years of emission factors in here, 2023 and 2024. All right, how do I use this fuel then in my environmental accounts? So let's take the vehicle environmental account. Let's take, for example, the BMW that we used before as well. Of course, you can organize the environmental account in any way that you want. If you want to go very granular and register model by model, or you can be more high level and register a car called petrol car, where you will gather all information about your petrol cars, and one called electric car. So it's really up to you and the time that you want to spend in the setup and the detail that you want to get from your final results. All right, this looks a little bit more complex, but in reality it's not. We are defining the name of our card, and we are specifying if it's an owned car, a leased, or it's part of a franchise. This is because my system, through the organizational boundaries that I defined in the beginning and this type of information, will know if the emissions of my car are to be allocated in scope 1 or scope 3, for example, for leased assets. This is the relevant field that we have to take care in the general fast step. And then in here, we will specify the propulsion type. So as options, we have electric car, a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and fuel vehicle. In this case, I'm recording fuel. I will select from my list of fuels petrol here, and I get all this specified. If I'm reporting the usage of my car by liters of fuel, then my work is done. I don't have to do anything else. But we want to give also the possibility to user to record the data on distance base, if that's the method that they use. So they can specify an emission factor also that is based on on distance, so on kilometer. And we can see in the journal in a moment that you can switch from one to the other as you prefer. If we look at an electric car, the difference here, of course, will be that the propulsion type electricity. And as I had my list of fuel types, I have my list of electricity types. I'm only based in UK. I only use my car in UK and recharge it in UK. So I will use electricity for UK. That's it. My information are all stored there. If I want more information and if I want to use this distance-based emission factor, then I can specify a data set here. If I'm using distance-based this time, I should specify the efficiency of my vehicle. In this way, the system, when you provide information about kilometer, will transform the kilometer into kilowatts and multiply by the location-based factor and the market-based factor. So you always have the dual reporting. And as you can imagine, if we take a plug-in hybrid, it will be a mix of electricity and fuel. So we specify a fuel type and an electricity type. And again, we have a distance-based section here. On top, you have an utility factor that we set up as default, but you can change it card by card. And this defines what is the portion of your travel that you did using electric engine over the overall trip. It can be just a general factor. This comes from literature, but you can define it based on the use that you do of your car. If we look at how this works in the journal then, let's take, for example, our BMW. It defaults to the liters to be reported. So I can just type in 50 liters and I will get my emissions calculated. Let's say that with the same car instead, I want to report on distance. So I will specify a distance code and say I travel 300 kilometers and I will get my results here in the same way. You can imagine that it works the same for an electric car. I can specify kilowatt, or in the same way I can specify the kilometers. In this case, I have two results because we're talking about electricity. And the same would be for a plug-in hybrid. So I can specify fuel, I can specify electricity, I can specify distance again. Let's say that we want to work with miles this time. And again, I get all my results. This time I have 4 results for one entry. So I will have my results for fuel combustion, my results for electricity, location-based, the upstream processes related to my electricity generation and the upstream processes related to my fuel. And you see that I even have a conversion from miles to kilometers. So even calculations are very, very transparent. What you would do here is that it's simply posted. All right, I think on my side that would be it. Christina, do you want to go through some questions maybe?
Yeah, actually, because I think we have something like 5 questions